So this is going to be a fun, interactive one. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of these things called Fishbowl panels. I need at least 2 volunteers to come on stage and like hang out. Yeah, come on up. So this is a ever open panel, okay? That means you can come sit down. Yeah, 4 is great, but 5 is not. No, you first. He talked last. I mean, Manu did too, but he was here first. So the name of the game is that there's always one open seat. That means if you come down and sit in this seat, one of the 4 of us have to be like, oh, who's going down? And it's not the one who's talking. The one who is talking has to continue talking. And the other 3 have to leave. One of them has to leave, and it's kind of a weird social game. But it works.
So who leaves?
Here's the plan. We're going to talk about mistakes. Mistakes have been made in the DAO space. Let's talk about them. We can start big, we can start small, but I'll kick it off. The intention of this is to learn from our mistakes. We often are so focused on singing our praises because we're trying to get money from investors or whatever. It really doesn't benefit us to learn from our mistakes. In our mistakes as an ecosystem, and we've made so many of them, and some of them are surprising, right? So like, for instance, the biggest mistake I've probably ever made with Giveth was not trying to get investment. Surprise, surprise, I did the airdrop thing, but I didn't raise money first. And because bull markets don't last forever, the token doesn't hold its value unless you got a bunch of investors helping to hold the value. So it was a big mistake for Giveth. I mean, we're surviving, we're doing great still, but man, I should have pulled like the investment. Like Manu, you went out and got investment for doing good, and that made your guys' life way easier than ours. So yeah. What other DAO fuck-ups can you get? And it doesn't have to be yours. It can be any. I have like 10. So.
I would say that the first DAO fuck-up that I've seen, the first DAO that I joined, I saw that basically a bunch of people came together, but there was no values. There were no values or no principles in place. And people were actually not knowing which direction they were going. And because they call it decentralized, everyone is pulling in different directions. And actually nothing is getting done. Or nothing is actually moving. Another thing that I've seen within DAOs is a lot of problem with identities. People contributing to DAOs. Let's say with different identities, and some people that are operators of DAOs, sometimes it's not that they've done it on purpose, but probably they allow it without diving deeper. They have allowed people to have several accounts or pretending to be several people that are contributing to the DAO, but actually it's just one person contributing to the DAO. And yeah, basically just taking the money from the treasury of the DAO. Another thing that I've seen is, obviously this token voting definitely doesn't work. It's based on money, not based on the principles or the values of the organization or the DAO that is, let's say, trying to achieve. Therefore, they leave a lot of vector of attacks by just allowing people just to come in and buy the token and then come to the, let's say, to the DAO vote. And basically, I've seen a group of people that are coming together to...
The raiders.
I've seen a group of people that are coming to the DAOs and they're exploiting the DAOs. Which I guess is good that they're exploiting it because the ones that create it allow it to happen or allow it to be like that. And then other problems that I've seen is DAOs sometimes funding the same thing multiple times because there's no accountability. So yeah, someone might be pretending to be doing something today, and then 3 months later they come with the same thing, pretending that, okay, it hasn't been done. Obviously, it wasn't done, but they get, again, paid for the same thing 2, 3 times, 4 times. So yeah, those are some of the problems. There are way more problems that I've seen, but these are the ones that are on top of my head.
So I'm just going to say that a huge theme of my time in Istanbul so far has actually, funnily enough, been talking about the ways in which we've looked too much forward and not enough back. Like, humans have been coordinating for thousands of years, right? We don't need to act like we have to reinvent the entire playbook. And what we're seeing is that some of these DAOs were just not very well thought out, right? They were too open in some ways, and there's no like vetting of qualifications for contributors, very little accountability, and people will just come in, get money, and hilariously, they'll often get pissed off and entitled when the money goes away. So it's actually dangerous and quite bad to be that loose with money, because it sets up your expectations wrong, and then people aren't doing things for the right reasons.
Thank you. The way I would say it simply, to me, there's too much vertical conversation and not enough horizontal conversation. There is so much about solving problems and how do we do it, and it's also a little too human-centric, a lot of the conversations, if that makes sense. So to me, what's missing in the space in a lot of DAOs, so how do we just connect without trying to get anywhere, if that makes sense? How do we connect to a lot of conversation, if I could say it's from the head up, and how much of the conversation is embodying what we're talking about? So if we talk about decentralization, are we living that in our lives? And how we're embodying it in our communities, and how we're practicing this on a daily basis? Because I don't think we're ever going to see the change that we want to see until we start living it. And how do we incorporate that? How do we incorporate ritual? I think someone shared about ritual. So we incorporate more of that heart connection along with these brilliant minds that are all here.
There's a lot of questions about incrementalism versus revolutionary thinking, you know, in terms of is it possible to change the world by changing things in little ways? I think that it is. But at the same time, if you look throughout its history, there's definitely been many examples of times that we really couldn't get the paradigm shift that we needed without a lot of upheaval and suffering along the way, right? So this is something I think about a lot.
I want to bring it back to like specific examples of DAOs. Because I mean, it's easy to talk about it in theory, but like, you know, the little negative case studies. So I want to say I love Mantle. I love Mantle. I think they're an incredible L2. I think they're innovating on a lot of levels, but they totally screwed up BitDAO at the beginning. Like, BitDAO had a huge treasury and still has a huge treasury, one of the largest, and they spent money like no tomorrow. They sent $500 million to Game 7, which was a legit move, great move actually. But then that opened up the floodgates for a lot of like not so great projects. They sent, you know, well, I mean, there were also EduDAO got $6 million or something like that, which was cool. They're a great project. But then there was this Africa DAO that came up. They didn't even have a website, right? They just kind of social, it seems like they kind of social attacked the DAO in a way. They met the right people to get the right votes. And they got a $20 million thing without a website, and eventually they were found out to just be like not doing anything. And so I think that BitDAO was able to get a lot of the money back they didn't send it all at once, but like, you know, I think DAOs have this tendency, and this is a case study, but DAOs have this tendency of when they start, they get really loose with money right away. They're like, hey, we're a DAO, we have money, we're supposed to spend it. So let's go, you know, let's go shopping on projects, and that it's not a healthy. It's definitely a flaw of this structure.
Yeah, there's definitely. I think if you're going to set up a DAO, like intentionality is really key, right? You need to set things up in such a way that you are setting yourself up for success and building towards whatever goals, and not just, hey, we're just going to decentralize this willy-nilly. I think, like, great example to me, don't know if I should really talk too much about this, but like, the broader like Near ecosystem spun up a bunch of grassroots DAOs, which were funded by the Near Foundation, right? Basically on the okay, I'm really worried about whatever.
It's okay. This is not. Oh, is this recorded? It is recorded.
Probably recorded. But
Oh
nobody,
shit!
I'm just.
I
gonna
thought
hope,
Danny told me this wasn't going to be recorded.
I just hope nobody's going to watch this. Anyway, I think
Probably
that
not. Yeah.
They went out and basically did what I consider decentralization theater to some extent, right? They gave money into the community, didn't really give a fuck how it got spent, right? And just that lets them say, hey, we decentralized. Like, we're not just a centralized governing body, which to me felt very dishonest. I think that if you're going to decentralize, you got to do it right. Like, yeah.
Well, I don't have a specific example I could give, but one thing that I'm also super curious is how DAOs are set up, because the moment a lot of DAOs go ahead and register themselves as a corporation, and to me, like, I'm really curious, like, is it still a DAO if it's registered as a corporation? So I don't know if that's a mistake, but I'm really curious about that conversation.
Yeah, this idea of a DAO wrapper, I think, is kind of like an oxymoron, for sure. Like, you can't really, for me, autonomous does not mean like autonomous vehicles. It means like autonomous nation state, right? So you're a sovereign entity, and if you're a DAO with a legal wrapper, then you're literally giving up your A. You're giving up your sovereignty. You're not really a DAO anymore. So, but there are other ways you can be a DAO with a legal service provider, right? And like Giveth has a couple legal entities, but the Giveth DAO is not a legal entity. But we have service providers that are a Swiss association and a 501c3 nonprofit. They're both say Giveth in their name, but they're not. They're just members of the DAO, right? They're participants in the DAO.
Yeah, I think that's a very important conversation because, yeah, you have to find a way to engage with the rest of the world, like setting up these things. But yeah, I think it's a very important conversation on how do we actually truly keep that sovereignty if we're going to be decentralized. Because, yeah, that sovereignty is what's going to... I think DAO has the potential to replace governments and corporations, but they're not going to be replacing it if you go back to the government, ask for their permission, and then you set up yourself as a corporation, because you can't be replacing a corporation if you are one. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I got an. Oh yeah.
Are we gonna bring another person in? I mean, we've been.
Well, yeah. Yeah, you don't have to go down yet. You can stay, but we're fishbowling. So recently there was another DAO fuck up. Gitcoin's DAO has been mostly only like maybe 10 voters have been participating in the voting lately, and they had a transaction to fund, I think it was their media arm, their like comms arm, and they accidentally sent $500,000 of GTC or something crazy like that to the GTC token address. So it's just gone. That GTC is just gone because someone had a fat finger typo. You know, they copy pasted the token address as, you know, which was one input of something they needed to send, and then they did it again as the recipient, and you know, they just can't get it. What's funny is the GTC token does have a mint function. So they could re-mint that GTC and give it back to the DAO. But they chose not to, which to me is actually just doesn't make any sense. You know, it's like, but there's the idealism of having, you know, an immutable currency, and they want to hold that steady. But I don't know. I'm curious of your guys' opinion. Should they re-mint? Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah, the Giveth people say remint. Does anyone else have a thought? Gitcoin. The Gitcoin DAO. The Gitcoin DAO is already assigned to be able to pass a vote that would mint the token, and they will. They're no. No, it would be a DAO vote to mint, but no one's willing to even propose it.
I'll propose it. I got some Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think you have to be a delegate. I don't even think I'm a delegate in GTC, but I don't think I have enough to make that proposal.
So there to me seems like a weakness, because you want to be able to receive feedback from outside of that bubble. You want people to be able to at least propose an idea for you to hear somewhere.
I promise if 100 people were voting regularly on GTC proposals, someone would have caught that mistake before it went through.
Yeah, it's like I don't know. The participation thing is really rough, right? Because you obviously want to reward people who are involved, who are like investing, what have you, right? But we see a lot of examples of what I call crusty DAOs, right? Where there's like all these people who just sit there. They don't really do anything in the DAO. They don't even delegate, really. They're just kind of, and not participating either. But there's no mechanism by which that kind of person can really be removed in most cases, and nothing that they would agree upon, surely, because, you know, like they say, a man will try very hard to not see something if his salary depends on it, right? So.
Any other DAO fuck-ups that people want to like talk about and learn from? Yeah, anyone want to come up here? Danny, do we have any other Giveth DAO fuck-ups?
Giveth DAO fuck-ups.
We're pretty good.
I mean, I wonder. No. I mean, honestly, why don't we have proposals happening in our garden?
Oh, the gardens in general, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we have this beautiful garden. I think it's amazing. There's nothing growing in our Giveth garden, you guys.
Yeah. we built this conviction voting thing, and you don't have to come up. I'll sit down.
Well, I mean, I think that I almost think that like using conviction voting in the Giveth DAO is almost a fuck up. I mean, the conviction voting idea is really great. Basically, the way that conviction voting works is that you can have multiple different proposals at the same time, and then token holders can like put tokens on each of the different proposals, and they can all be there, and then like the proposals that are most popular over time can eventually pass. And this concept, I think, I mean, the idea is if we were working with it within Giveth, it would work really well if we had a lot of proposals. But in the garden, what ended up happening is we were just having kind of like these like one-off proposals, sort of like one at a time, and not really a lot of action of proposals moving through the garden. So then like the garden and conviction voting kind of became this thing that we're like, oh, we don't really use that. And it's like, oh, everybody who has lots of tokens in Giveth, you should stake them all and abstain, because we don't want it to be too easy to pass these like proposals, because just one proposal came in and then it was really easy to just like make it pass. So then it was kind of like, the theory of conviction voting would work really well if we had a lot of competing proposals, because then there would be a chance for the best ones to pass. But because we had such a low volume of external proposals coming in, the entire conviction voting concept just like doesn't really work well for us. And so now it's basically impossible to pass things in conviction voting, because like everybody with like lots of give tokens is just staking on abstain. So it's like you'd never be able to pass anything else. So it's almost like it's like a fuck up where it's like, okay, it'd be great to like decentralize the way that we're funding proposals, but then it still kind of became centralized, where most of our give token allocations come through our reputation DAO, where it's like our reputation DAO holds a lot of give tokens, and you can only get tokens there if you're a contributor, and you kind of like stay for time. So it's really interesting. It's like, let's decentralize voting power into the hands of give token holders, and there are ways that give token holders can vote, but not really on how we allocate give tokens.
I'd given I had an angle come in as I was listening to you speak about that. And one of the things people love when I talk about Giveth is how we created a reputation DAO. And the only purpose of that DAO was to create the economy in the other DAO that we would then transfer responsibility over to, right? So those who had the reputation built the first set, and then the idea, the garden, is where we would be handing over control to. In some way, it might be that our reputation DAO hasn't wanted to let go of control and allow the rest of the token holders to actually have governance and encourage use in that.
I mean, I can also just let you keep a mic.
Yeah.
Oh, no, you can come. I can go. I'll sit there. Oh, you can't leave. You're the mod. Okay.
The mod can totally leave.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard. I mean, within Giveth, the external people don't have the context. And this is kind of like, it's like a DAO ecosystem fuck up. And it's also happening within Giveth where it's like, you know, I mean, part of the reason that like I'm a reputation token holder within Giveth, and it's true, I kind of don't want other people to really have as much voting power on how our tokens are being allocated because I have the entire picture of the Give economy and the long-term Giveth roadmap, like all really within my brain. And I can argue like why this is so important, but it's like, you know, really outside of the Giveth core team, like nobody really cares and they don't have the bandwidth. I mean, they care of the end results, but they don't have the bandwidth to understand the entire like complexity of the governance processes and systems. So I think like we see huge DAO fuck ups in that like people can't pay attention. The attention is limited in the ecosystem.
I think there's like a huge problem also with sometimes people who want to be involved can't be involved, right? And this is also another problem that comes up with these token-based DAOs, right? Like maybe the token's too expensive, maybe you just don't care enough to get the token, but you care enough about what the DAO is doing, right? So maybe you want to contribute, but how do you bring people in? And is it enough to say, you know, if you really cared, you would get some of this token, right? I think it's difficult because very rarely do you see people in the real world, like oftentimes the best people for doing a job are the ones who are never going to do it unless you force them to. Don't know what else to say about that. Just like I wish we had more mechanisms to kind of make sure that we're always improving and always kind of making sure that the people that care the most are also involved in steering the ship.
I have another DAO fuck up. The tally style governance, you know, the one that's the most famous or like most active in the large DAOs right now is like compound style delegation. You know, Arbitrum, Uniswap, Gitcoin, they all use tally and they have like, you have these delegates. And the delegates have all of a sudden, like for instance, I'm a top 10 delegate in Arbitrum. I have no idea why or how. Some random whale gave me 10 million ARB, delegated 10 million ARB to me. No idea who they are. But now I have to like, you know, represent opinions in an ecosystem.
Man.
Yeah, exactly. Now I have a job, right? And I went to Burning Man for 45 days. You know, like I was gone. I take vacation. I can't redelegate. I can't like what? So I'm not allowed to take vacation now because I'm a delegate. Like I can't send my power to someone else. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think delegate style voting, people are complaining it all over the place. It's just like representative governance, like finding the right representative. But then it was like you were talking about, I mean, when we were talking about the Gitcoin example, it's like there's only a few people who could actually make that proposal. And maybe there's a broader user base who cares about the outcome of like, you know, if they mint, you know, 50 million GTC or not. But yeah, it's really hard. It's like our voting processes in DAOs are still very old style. It's like still horse and buggy, like yes, no voting, like rank these choices, read these long context things, and even like, oh, you didn't want to read that context thing? Okay, put the hands in these like the small centralized, the power in the hands of a small centralized group. It's just like.
So I'm going to go ahead and say some more stuff that sounds really good and doesn't really have any bite because I have no idea how to make it happen. Let's see. So I think that where was I going with this before I gave my mea culpa?
You're doing great.
Basically, I worry a lot about just not people taking, at the end of the day, DAOs are all about people, right? DAOs are always about people. And people should never be beholden to the tech if the tech is no longer serving them. So I think that that's an important thing that we need to somehow build into these things. because we do sometimes need people to act a little bit against their self-interest, and that's very hard to get people to do. Like, so, well, I'll just end it on that.
I think what I said earlier, I think we need to incorporate more ritual and actually connecting on a deeper level outside of day-to-day tasks. You know, like we're not just here to solve problems, we're actually we're here because we really care about the mission.
And to work with the people who also care.
And to work with the people. So how do we actually connect on a deeper emotional level? How do we connect on a spiritual level outside of just work and solving problems? And I think if we incorporate more of that into the DAOs, it creates true community, and that will have people be a lot more engaged.
Well, our time is up. So thanks for enjoying DAO Fuck Ups.